Do you like miserable books? Horrible, tear-inducing, snot-inducing, horrible pieces of literature. I used horrible too many in that sentence. But you've come to the right place. I'm going to tell you about a whole bunch of miserable literature from every corner of the globe. Why? Because Misery May is back. That is a bookish event where we, that is my lovely co-host Gemma from Gemma Books and myself, encourage you, the viewers, to read miserable books in the month of May. And this year we're taking things on the road. It's Misery Around the World edition. There are 6 prompts and each vaguely is referring to a different corner of the world. So I'm going to tell you about 3 perfectly miserable books from each continent. Well, actually, I'm going to do a little bit of a thing. You'll see. Every book I'm going to talk about is from a different country. And we're going to start in South America, which are these countries. Cantores by Caro de Robertos, 1977. Uruguay is under military dictatorship and 5 queer women, some of who are married, take a holiday to a remote village and buy a house. The fate of these women are very different. Some experience love, some experience heartbreak, some are abducted by the government and tortured for being socialists, some are raped by soldiers, some are raped by their husbands, some are the victims of domestic violence. All are oppressed in different ways. And what Robertus is exploring is how this oppression molds them as human beings over the next 30 plus years. Character readers will love this book. The Fruit of the Drunken Tree by Ingrid Rojas Contreras. 1990s Bogota, drugs, gang, guerrilla-run slums. Pablo Escobar is at his height, and that has turned Colombia into a scary place to live. But 7-year-old Chuwilla and her sister Cassandra live in a gated community, a bubble of safety away from kidnapping, bombings, and assassinations. Except that wouldn't make for a very interesting book, would it? This book is as dark as they come, and if you want to know what it would be like to live in fear of your children's life, not just your own, of not being able to trust anybody, if you want to find out why Colombians are so keen to escape to America, even now, then this is the book for you. It is a political thriller touching on a point in Colombia's history that was very dark, and it develops the characters enough to give you a really strong emotional connection and kick when you need a kick. And these characters are not just the victims. There is so many shades of grey in this book. There's exploitation and desperation leading to people doing some truly horrible things, an absolute brute of a novel. The Queens of Sarmiento Park, or Bad Girls, by Camila de Souza Villarda, translated from Spanish by Kit Maud. 2 different titles for this book, same book, different markets. A collection of trans women, sex workers, live together in a hodgepodge house and find a baby in a park, save it and take it home. The mother of the group even begins to breastfeed it. A lot of misery in this story comes from the clients that these women service, the darkness they have seen, the post-traumatic stress disorder they suffered from because of the war they fought in. Yet some of the violence is directed towards the women too. Hanging over this novel is the spectre of death, domestic violence, police brutality, disease. All of these things kill trans women before their time. And here is the comparison. He survived war. They just walked the streets of a small Argentinian town. But both are traumatized, both suffer from PTSD, both have seen way too much death in their life. I think there is so much value in seeing how trans people are treated in another country, in Argentina instead of the West, observing what is the same and what is different. On to the next continent, we are staying in the Americas, and this time we're moving just a little bit north, and we have all of these countries. By the way, if you find the classification of some of these countries inconvenient and want to argue for something like you can basically swim from Trinidad and Tobago to Venezuela, then you're officially cheating, which I encourage. Speaking of Trinidad and Tobago, one of my favourite reads last year is The Lost Love Songs of Boise Sing by Ingrid Persaud. One man's life told through the voices of the 4 women he loved, based on the real life of a gangster pirate, a Trinidadian boogeyman, and the reported killer of over 400 humans. What you initially think is a character portrait and the story of one man's life is actually a story of the realities of Trinidadian life at the time, told through 4 women who narrate the story. These 4 women come to life and steal the show, but they're not all good, or careful, or treat Boise as the homicidal maniac he clearly is. Sometimes they're very manipulative. In a way, Boise's relationship with these 4 women is a representation of the relationship between men and women, and it's dark. Touching on themes of heartbreak, domestic violence, abuse, stalking, motherhood, coercion, and control. This book is really dark. The country that I think does gritty, miserable, hard to read books the best is Jamaica. You can basically pick up almost anything a popular Jamaican author has written and you're going to be pretty good. This is the country that spawned Marlon James, for example, who, if you've not read, take this as a bonus recommendation. Either A Brief History of 7 Killings or The Book of Night Women are just wow books. But instead of James, I want to recommend you Sherry Jones and How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House. Trigger warnings, rape, incest, dead babies, domestic violence, horrible domestic violence. If you're thinking hitting, punching or kicking, then you're in for a really nasty shock. If you're not sure, do not take a chance on this novel. This is about 2 women from opposite parts of Baxter Beach. One is well off, one not. And 2 men. One man is the partner of the poorer woman, and one man loves the poorer woman. Both are petty criminals, and one is thinking of dropping the word petty from his profession. This is a novel about how grief incapacitates, even in the face of the most horrible things life can throw your way. It's about trauma and guilt, and not just how that is horrible at the time, but how it can lead to depression and push you towards horrible choices that in turn can re-traumatize you and dig you into this horrible feedback loop. Man, I'm really loving the word horrible today, aren't I? This book is too strong for a lot of people, but if you're looking for a miserable book that isn't afraid to go to the absolute darkest reaches of humanity, and if you're watching this video, I kind of assume that you could be that person, then this is the book you are looking for. 5 Little Indians by Michelle Good is a Canadian novel about 5 Indigenous children who are taken from their families and sent to a state-run school. The abuse and mistreatment they receive at the school and the lasting impacts this has upon the rest of their lives. It tackles suicide, depression, alcoholism, broken homes, prison, activism, poverty, sex work, and really tragedy, the inability to allow somebody to love you. Good is really good, pun intended, at showing you how societal disadvantage is virtually impossible to overcome, and how being part of Canada's version of the stolen generation brutalizes the lives of these children. I found this particularly interesting as a lot of what was going on in this book mirrors what was happening in my own country at the same time, and it felt like an exploration of an old topic from a very new angle. As while the Canadian 60s scoop and Australia's stolen generations are similar, each country's government has their own flavours of cruelty, and I think readers from the USA, Sweden or New Zealand might have quite a similar experience, as their Indigenous populations are also very disadvantaged and attempts have been made to whiteify those cultures. Moving on to my neck of the woods and Oceania, or these countries. Everything is Beautiful and Everything Hurts by Josie Shapiro. This is a much more well-balanced miserable novel than some of the other books we've had in this video. While it tackles themes such as grief, grooming, bullying, abuse, eating disorders, and sexual assault, it balances all of these with themes of resilience and regrowth. Mickey Bloom is in her 40s, dead-end job, shit boyfriend, seriously ill mother, and she is looking back on her life and how she got into running. 5'0", dyslexic and bullied. As a schoolgirl, Nikki discovers running, and what's more, she's really good at it. It is the first time Mickey has been good at anything, and it is all she wants to do. What starts off as a joy quickly consumes her life, leaving her broken, both in body and in mind. However, later in life, running offers her something she's not getting in her regular life. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, does it? This novel also appears under the title Mickey Bloom in some places. There are just so many excellent titles from Aussie authors that are miserable that I could have included here. It could have been its own video, but I wanted to hype something amazing, but something that would be quite new to my international audiences. Also, this is not a sponsored spot, it's just really useful information for my international viewers who often complain to me that Aussie books are not available to them. Readings.com.au is a smaller independent book chain in Australia and they ship internationally. Shipping can be a little costly. It's just under £10 if you're in the UK, $18 for the USA or Canada, and €18 for Germany, Italy, France, and the Netherlands. But this is a flat fee. You can spread that over as many books as you want and make that quite costly fee become much more reasonable, and you can team up with a couple of friends in the area if you're looking for some Aussie books. Unfortunately, that's just what it costs to send books from Australia, so you're going to have to find a way to make that work. Anyway, onto the book. Echalalia by Bryony Doyle. This book is broken up into two sections, before and after. You're not sure what happens before, but it's quite strongly implied that Emma is in some way responsible for the disappearance of her baby Robbie from the after timeline. After, Emma is institutionalized and she is about to get out. Before, young and recently out of school, Emma doesn't have enough time to learn what married life is like before she is a new mother, and now she suddenly has 3 children, a husband who is working all the time, a controlling mother-in-law, and a perfect life to coordinate for everybody else but herself. She is stressed, sleep-deprived, voiceless, powerless, objectified, and the cracks in her mental health are becoming visible. At the same time, this book is exploring class and climate, but it really is about motherhood, mental health, and grief. Did Emma kill baby Robbie? Did she leave him somewhere to be kidnapped? Did she somehow neglect him and lead to some sort of accidental death? Or has she been gaslit into taking responsibility for something somebody else is responsible for? I know that's going to be only 2 books from Oceania, but Oceania is tiny and Asia is massive and includes all of these countries. So we're going to have 4 books from there. A Fine Balance by Rohinton Mistry, a historical fiction set in India's emergency, a period of Indian history covering 1975 to 1977, in which Indira Gandhi declared a state of emergency across India. The story follows 4 characters, an uncle and nephew Taylor, a widow and a student who all live together. What is kind of cool is that each of these characters have a backstory, and these backstories are so well written. They could have been their own successful novels, yet they're just the beginning of this amazing one. This tragic story hits on so many themes. Some of them are obvious, like caste or begging, but then there's things like India's program of forced sterilization of men, leading to 6.2 million men being denied food, wages, and other essential services until they agreed to be sterilized. There are some really tragic and brutal things that happen in this novel. There's this thing with a refrigerator, for example, and these are things that actually happen. They're based on real life events. Sometimes they're a government program and sometimes they're a news article, but they're all real. And this is one of the best books I have ever read. When you finish this book, you know you've read something special. First, They Killed My Father by Leong Young. This is a memoir about the Khmer Rouge, told by a 5-year-old girl who, along with her family, has to flee from her home when Pol Pot catches Phnom Penh. Both her parents are killed by the Khmer Rouge, and she is then trained as a child soldier. This is a memoir that is honestly exactly what you're expecting it to be, but worse or better, depending on how you want to view that. The Waiting by Ken Suk Gendry Kim. I thought I'd go for something different and include a graphic novel in this list, because this is a really good one and I don't often talk about graphic novels. It's about an older woman whose sister lives in the other Korea, told from the point of view of her daughter who is looking after her. It jumps back into the Korean War and really hits on the realities of how confusing it is in a war zone and the arbitrary but life-changing choices of whether to trust the US soldiers or run from them, being in danger from everywhere, not knowing who is shooting at you, being shot at by your allies, being hungry, not having food. This is a sad story on its own, but when you add in 50 years of separation and not knowing your family and the trauma that is left behind, whoa, it's truly beautiful in a very sad way. Minor Detail by Adania Shiblai, translated from Arabic by Elizabeth Jackie. In 1949, a Palestinian girl is gang raped by Israeli soldiers. In the modern day, a Palestinian woman is trying to find out what details of the crime remains. Can she uncover anything further? This is a story about the lives of Palestinian people, and particularly women, against the Israeli government. It is a real gut punch of a book. It's short, but it will leave you numb. Moving on to these countries, which are better known collectively as Africa. Woman at Point Zero by Noel El Sadawai, translated from Arabic by Sharif Herata. This novel begins with a journalist trying to interview Firdress, a woman condemned to death for having murdered her pimp, and she welcomes the death as the only way she can ever be free in this world as a woman. But how did she get there? What was her life like before? Was it really so bad that she can welcome death now? It is grim and a real pity that booktube wasn't around when this was first published in 1975, because it would have been massive, it would have been viral. Feminist Egyptian Misery. This is the Kim Jong born 1982 of the 70s, but it's darker. The Girl Who Smiled Beads by Clementine Wamaraya. This is another memoir, and on the surface it is very similar to First They Killed My Father, but it's Rwandan. But dig deeper and you'll see that it is a very different book. Clementine is 6, her sister Claire is 15. In 6 years' time, Clementine would be granted asylum to the US. Along the way, the pressure of war, migration, and seeking asylum will tear her family apart. There are things like seeing your 15-year-old sister bribe a soldier with the only thing her penniless body has to offer, so that they can pass a checkpoint, so that they can survive, so that they could eat for the night. This is just so bleak, and again, it really happened. The Road to the Country by Shigozi Obiyama. I just don't understand why this book wasn't so much more popular when it was released last year. The man I think most major literary critics would say is the biggest and the best author in Nigeria at the moment, writing about that big war that shaped his country's recent history. Biafra for a Nigerian author is like Petition for an Indian author, or World War II for a historical fiction author without imagination. You must write about it. Seeking not just redemption but to save his brother, Kunle joins the war and is unwittingly and unwillingly forced to fight for Biafra, and witnesses all the gore and hypocritical division on both sides of the war that it contains. How can Nigeria ever be one country after this? It is a symbolic relationship between the two brothers that represents two countries. Moving on to Europe, which are these countries, and I've got to start with a French author, because when Gemma and I were discussing what we should do for Misery May 3, Charlie, her young son with a very big personality, deigned to call me French. So Charlie, as they say in my country, vite, flambé de fromage dans le jardin. Anyway, after those sage words, let's get back to the miserable books. Germinal by Emile Zola, translated from French by Roger Pearson, and probably half a dozen other people too. I just had to put this classic on the list because wow. Yeah, you think it's about a mining strike, and then there's this mob, and you think, oh cool, a mob, and then the penis thing happens, and then people start to starve, and those two events are only partially related. And then some really bleak stuff happens that I won't go into because spoilers. But honestly, not enough of you read this book to find out what the penis thing is. Where's your curiosity, people? This was written 140 years ago, and it is such an influential and important book. Every serious reader should read it. I get it. There's a lot of books out there like that, but this is a special novel from a special author that doesn't get the praise it deserves, probably because of its political themes around unions. But the thing is, take away those political themes and you still have an amazing novel that is emotional and both character and plot driven with amazing, vivid prose. Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart. I kind of wanted to avoid the UK, because it's a big country and all of that. But if you want miserable books, you have to read Scottish literature. I could have gone for Mayflies by Andrew O'Hagan, or about 15 other novels too. Also, let's get to the real point. Scotland isn't really part of the UK. I mean, not on the map or legally, but spiritually. I'm pretty sure the average Scottish person would prefer to eat a vegetable that hasn't been deep fried than they would be in any group containing English folk. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scottish folk. Anyway, Shuggie Bain won the Booker, but don't hold that against it. It's a quality novel. It's about a young queer boy and his alcoholic and abusive mother who he desperately loves. Domestic violence, extreme poverty, bullying, social stigma, and shit parents are all massive topics in this novel, but it all leads up to this big, horrible event. Amazing writing that really captures the characters' emotions and transports them straight in your digestive system. If you've been sleeping on this book, wake up to it. It's, whoa, that's a word now. Tiamor by Hanne Ostrovik, translated from Norwegian by Karen Fastrap. I reviewed this recently on this channel and it is the most emotional book I've ever read. Yeah, okay, it was emotional for a very personal reason, but if you've ever been a carer, read this book. This is an autofiction book. The husband of the author had a terminal illness and eventually died, and she was the carer, and this is about her last sort of 18 months with him. It is a beautiful but an incredibly difficult read. This is a book that will personally stay with me forever. 18 books from 18 different countries, all miserable. Hopefully something for everybody's taste too. I mean, as long as you like miserable books, which of course you do, because we all know happy is boring. Now, if you're joining us for Misery May 3, let us know what books you're planning on reading in the comments section. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye bye. And thank you to all of my lovely Patreons for their support.